On the morning of October 15th, 1917, in the courtyard of the Vincennes barracks near Paris, 12 soldiers stood in a straight line. Their hands gripped their rifles, their faces tense and solemn. In front of them stood a woman draped in a dark cloak. Her demeanor was calm and proud. She had once captivated crowds with her dances, received gifts from powerful men, and told enchanting stories. Perhaps she had also shared a few secrets in the elegant rooms of grand hotels. She was Mata Hari, a dancer, an entertainer, and a name infamous in the history of espionage. During the First World War, France was exhausted after years of trench warfare. An entire army was collapsing under the weight of defeat. The military feared not only the enemy across the barbed wire, they feared the invisible threats, spies, traitors, and the rumors that could shatter the fragile unity of a nation. And to preserve that unity, they needed an example to serve as a warning. In the final months of the war, casualties continued to mount. The morale of the soldiers grew increasingly fragile. The French High Command believed that a single trial could accomplish more than any victory at the front. A public execution would prove that betrayal, whether real or imagined, would be punished with the ultimate sentence. The press called her the most dangerous woman in Europe. Counterintelligence officers insisted she was a German spy, but in the secret files, the evidence remained contradictory and fragmented. Why did this woman become the face of treason? Was she truly the spy who cost the lives of thousands of soldiers, or merely a convenient scapegoat offered up to hold together a crumbling front? And when the rifles fired that morning, was it justice or simply fear wearing a military uniform? Margaretha Geertruida Zell was born into a once prosperous family in Leeuwarden, the Netherlands, on August 7th, 1876. Her father, Adam Zell, was a wealthy merchant. He owned a hat shop and invested in the oil industry. Thanks to this, the family quickly became affluent. Margarita and her siblings enjoyed a luxurious childhood, attending schools reserved for children of well-off families until she was 13 years old. But fortune soon turned its back on them. The business collapsed, and the family fell apart. Her parents divorced, and her mother died when Margarita was only 13. Margarita grew up without a mother's affection. Those years shaped a girl who was both resilient and eager to escape, seeking the glow of fame to banish the darkness around her. At the age of 18, through a newspaper advertisement seeking a husband, she married Rudolph MacLeod, a Dutch army officer 20 years her senior. What seemed like an escape turned out to be a prison. Domestic violence and her husband's coldness kept the household in constant tension. Tragedy struck when one of their two children, little Norman, died under mysterious circumstances in the Dutch East Indies, where the family had been living. Heartbroken and shattered, Margarita left everything behind and departed the Dutch East Indies for Paris in 1902, carrying with her the determination to reinvent herself. In Paris, Margarita transformed into Mata Hari, a name that evoked the mysterious dawn of the East. With dances inspired by Java and India, she captivated audiences at prestigious venues like the Folies Bergère. The graceful movements and the delicate veils falling under the stage lights turned her into a symbol of seduction and freedom. But behind the silk and the glow was a fragile existence. She depended on the favors of powerful men, from generals to wealthy industrialists. Mata Hari lived like a flame, brilliant but easily extinguished, always calculating every step to survive in the treacherous world of pre-war Paris high society. When World War I broke out in 1914, France was engulfed in an atmosphere of tension and chaos. Even so, many people still felt a sense of exhilaration. Paris was the heart of Europe, pulsing to the beat of the war drums. The French government was confident in its sophisticated network of spies, built to counter the powerful German Empire. But reality turned out to be quite different. A fever of information spread everywhere. Every glance was scrutinizing. Every whisper could be an act of treason. The obsession with double agents seeped into every street corner and every aristocratic salon. The press, like a wind fanning the flames, continuously exploited the image of Mata Hari. They portrayed her as a mysterious woman with complicated connections and turned her into a symbol of decadent high society. They described her as the queen of desire, a potential threat, even though no one had clear evidence. In the cafes, people whispered about the nights she entertained military officers. They spoke of love letters and secrets that might have been exchanged in the dark. In the bustling streets of Paris in 1916, Mata Hari moved like a legendary silhouette. She captivated every gaze but carried a lonely heart. Beneath the lights of high society salons and in intelligence offices, no one believed Mata Hari was a cold-blooded, calculating spy. She skillfully transformed herself into a woman battered by life, who had lost what was most precious to her. Now she clung to the glow of the stage and her powerful connections to survive. The performances at prestigious theaters, the meetings with generals and politicians, were both a playground of seduction and a way for her to build a fragile wall against a harsh world. From the summer of 1914, rows of seats gradually emptied as French and German officers left for the front. Lavish parties and envelopes filled with generous payments became rare luxuries. Invitations grew scarce, and the list of patrons quietly disappeared. As World War I swept Europe into a whirlwind of gunsmoke and suspicion, Mata Hari became an unwilling pawn in the game of espionage. In 1916, Georges Ledoux, head of French military intelligence, recognized her potential. A woman who could extract information from influential German figures thanks to her beauty and fame. The French intelligence service, confident in its network of spies, indulged her, assigning her the code name H21 and providing generous sums of money. They authorized her to travel freely between warring nations. It was a rare privilege, as if she were a secret weapon no one expected. For Mata Hari, this collaboration carried no sense of loyalty or political ambition. She saw it only as a transaction, a way to maintain a lavish life amid the chaos of wartime. She did not foresee that the conversations in hotel rooms and the bits of information she passed along could later be used against her. She moved freely through consulates and attended parties where officers were captivated by her stories. She continued to appear in the press as a symbol of extravagant allure. In the early days, French intelligence fully trusted her. They let her operate without restraint and even encouraged her to use her connections to extract information. She seemed like a harmless pawn in the game of war. There were nights when she stood in the lobby of the Ritz Hotel, waiting for a carriage to take her to some gala. Strings of pearls glistened, and the lights caught on the thin layers of her veils. She smiled when reporters approached, answering with a confident tone. She believed she knew exactly how to play this game, where the limits were, and how to keep herself safe. Until then, Mata Hari still thought she stood outside the war. A clever artist, free, belonging to no side. But war always finds a way to shatter even the most fragile illusions. Who truly decided Mata Hari's fate? The French high command, the eager newspapers, or the fear spreading across every front line? Paris in 1917, while World War I roared across the blood-soaked trenches. The Western Front, where French forces faced the German war machine, had become a furnace consuming thousands of lives. Soldiers' morale collapsed, and the reports from Verdun and the Somme brought nothing but news of catastrophic losses. In this crisis, the French government and its intelligence apparatus needed someone to blame, a scapegoat to placate the public and set an example. Mata Hari, the woman they had once indulged, became the perfect target. The French intelligence service, which had once seen her as a useful tool, now turned on her with ruthless speed, transforming her from a seductive dancer into a double agent in the eyes of the entire nation. Just a few months earlier, Mata Hari, under the code name H21, had been recruited by French intelligence to gather information from influential German figures. Her trips through the Netherlands, Spain, and England, once authorized to serve her mission, were now scrutinized through a lens of suspicion. The generous payments from the French Intelligence Bureau, originally meant as operational support, were twisted into rewards for treason. This shift was no accident. Pressure from the battlefield and the failure to stop the German advance made the French intelligence service desperate for a victory, even if only in the arena of public opinion. Mata Hari, with her notorious reputation and tangled relationships, was an easy prey. They turned against her because she was a foreign woman with no political backing. That made her an ideal symbol of betrayal, a convenient distraction from military failures. Evidence against Mata Hari began to surface, but it was thin and highly disputed. German-coded messages, intercepted by the British, mentioned an agent with the code name H21, and French intelligence quickly linked that name to her. Leaked reports, some provided by Ledoux himself, the head of French intelligence, sparked a wave of suspicion. The French press, like a pack of hungry wolves, rushed to exploit Mata Hari's image. Newspapers painted her portrait as a seductive traitor, fueling public outrage and fear. From a star of the stage, she became a symbol of danger, a name that made people shudder. Every eye turned toward Mata Hari. Those who had once admired her at lavish parties now kept their distance, whispering behind her back. The consulates closed their doors to her, and the freedom of movement once granted by French intelligence was revoked. She was isolated, hunted in the very city that had once celebrated her. On February 13, 1917, Mata Hari was arrested at the Hotel Élysée Palace, where she had once lived in the glow of fame. French police stormed into her room and dragged her away without a single explanation. All that remained were cold stares and the arrest warrant. She was taken away, her hands tightly shackled. The destination was Saint-Lazare prison, a grim fortress on the western edge of the city. The gray stone walls stained with damp patches and the stifling air rising from the cold stone floors seemed to numb any thought of freedom. In the cramped cell, dim light filtered through the barred window, just enough to cast harsh shadows across her face. Once a stage star who had captivated all of Europe, Mata Hari was now stripped of every trace of glamour. She was merely a prisoner in a plain prison dress, facing absolute isolation. The interrogations began immediately and stretched on for weeks. In a small, freezing room, furnished only with a scarred wooden table and a few hard chairs, investigators from the French Intelligence Bureau took turns questioning her. All of it under the direction of Georges Ledoux. They fired questions at her in rapid succession, their voices sharp. At times, they raised their voices in harsh outbursts to increase the pressure. Remember, Georges Ledoux was the intelligence chief who had once recruited her and assigned her the code name H21. Her trips through the Netherlands, Spain, and England, which had once been authorized for her missions, were now scrutinized as evidence of betrayal. They demanded details about her connections to German officers, such as Captain Alfred Kiepert, as well as the powerful French figures she had once mingled with. What did you say to them? What secrets did you share? The questions came again and again, never ceasing. Mata Hari, though exhausted, maintained a calm tone, stating that she had only received money from French intelligence in exchange for harmless information, mostly social gossip from high society gatherings. But her words fell into the void. The investigators were not searching for the truth. They needed a confession to strengthen their case against her. She was denied full access to her lawyer. Edouard Clunet, her attorney, was allowed to see her only on rare occasions, always under the strict supervision of prison guards. Each visit permitted just a few hurried exchanges, never enough to build a proper defense strategy. In her cell, isolation hung heavy. The footsteps of the guards echoed along the stone corridors. The whispers of other prisoners and the metallic clank of locks were the only sounds she heard each day. The investigators relentlessly applied psychological pressure, making her believe that her fate was sealed and that only a confession might offer a chance at a lighter sentence. Yet Mata Hari, though her eyes sometimes betrayed a glimmer of despair, maintained an air of pride. In the cold interrogation room, every answer she gave was dismissed. Every small detail of her once glamorous life was turned into a fragment of a narrative of treason. French intelligence, which had once recruited her with promises of protection, now quietly left her alone to face the harsh justice awaiting her at Vincennes. Everything was distorted to construct the portrait of a dangerous traitor, revealing the ruthless face of the wartime machinery of power, willing to sacrifice anyone to preserve its own image and interests. In the summer of 1917, Mata Hari now faced her fate in a military trial at the Palais de Justice. On July 24th and 25th, she was brought before a closed court. Only military officers sat as judges and prosecutors. The presiding judge was Colonel Albert Sommer, while the prosecutor was Captain André Mornay. Both men carried the mindset of wartime, viewing Mata Hari as a threat that needed to be eliminated. The indictment relied on thin evidence. A few German telegrams mentioning the codename H21, vague testimony from witnesses, and her travels across Europe. Nevertheless, the prosecutor described her as the most dangerous female spy in Europe, accusing her of being responsible for the deaths of tens of thousands of French soldiers. Mata Hari tried to defend herself, insisting she had only worked for French intelligence and had never betrayed them. Yet her chances to protect herself were almost non-existent. Her lawyer, Edouard Clunet, who represented her, was restricted in what he could say. The prosecutor framed his questions so that every explanation became proof against her. The trial moved swiftly, lasting only 2 days. The death sentence was pronounced on July 25th, as sharp and cold as a blade. She wrote farewell letters to her daughter Jean-Louise and to her lawyer Clunet. In them, she expressed her love and regret. The hastily scribbled lines revealed her pain, but were also her final attempt to preserve her dignity. She and Clunet filed an appeal for clemency to French President Raymond Poincaré. A few old friends, such as the Spanish diplomat Juan de Estella, tried to intervene on her behalf. But the French general staff, under the pressures of war and the need to reassure the public, rejected all petitions. They needed a symbolic victory, and Mata Hari was the ideal scapegoat. Outside the prison, the French press seized on every detail of the case. They ran sensational headlines about the seductive female spy, meant to soothe the public's fear in the face of repeated failures on the battlefield. Public opinion, which had once adored her, now turned away. They openly supported the death sentence as proof that justice had been served. Those who had once admired her no longer dared to speak in her defense. In her cell, Mata Hari gradually realized that every effort was in vain. A nun who visited her later recounted that she always insisted on being treated with dignity. She refused to let herself be degraded, even in her final hours. On the night before the execution, October 14th, 1917, the guards came to read the order of execution. Mata Hari remained calm as she wrote her final letter. She sent words of love to her daughter. She chose to wear an elegant black dress with a red rose pinned to her chest, as if she were preparing for one last performance. On the morning of October 15th, the transport took her along the empty streets of Paris to the Vincennes barracks. Under the gray sky, she stepped out of the vehicle and faced the firing squad with eyes unclouded by fear, ready for her final moment. The parade ground at Vincennes was steeped in the cold, gray air of an October morning. The firing squad, 12 French soldiers, stood in formation, waiting for her. Mata Hari was tied tightly to a wooden post, but she refused a blindfold. She looked straight into the muzzles of the rifles with a calm that made one officer present shudder. A command rang out, and a volley of bullets tore through the air. She collapsed, ending a life filled with turmoil. Her body was taken away in haste. She was buried in a simple, unmarked grave in a local cemetery, as if the world wished to erase the existence of this female spy. After the execution, the French press gleefully ran headlines, calling Mata Hari a venomous snake that had finally been removed, a victory for justice amid the brutal war. The public, exhausted by the defeats at Verdun and the Somme, could momentarily breathe easier, believing a traitor had been punished. But in the shadows, voices of doubt began to stir. Some journalists, like Henry Wales, who had witnessed the execution firsthand, wrote about her uncanny composure. He planted seeds of suspicion. Was she truly as dangerous as the charges claimed? Witnesses who had known her, including officers, revealed that the information she held was nothing more than fragments of social gossip. He argued that she had no real means to inflict military harm. The echoes of the case spread, leaving a Paris divided between satisfaction and the many unresolved questions. Many years later, historians began to reopen the files and ask, was Mata Hari truly a double agent or merely a scapegoat for a desperate France? Declassified documents, including intercepted German telegrams, revealed that the evidence against her was exceedingly thin and lacking specificity. Some scholars, such as Pat Shipman, argued that she became a target simply because she was a foreign woman. She was easily branded as the seductive female spy amid the feverish paranoia of wartime. The French intelligence apparatus that had once recruited her exploited her fame and her naivety to cover up their own failures. Over time, Mata Hari's image was transformed in history. From a convicted criminal, she became a symbol of the oppression of women, of gender bias, and of the fear bred by war that leads to hasty, biased judgments. She became a cautionary tale, a woman suffocated by the very system that once embraced her, then turned her into a pawn in a ruthless power game. More than a century later, the name Mata Hari still echoes, not just as a dancer, but as a symbol of injustice and the fragile nature of truth in times of war. If war can turn an artist into a criminal, then who is truly more frightening, the accused or those who hold power?